Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about our LiveAway program to Sicily, where we'll be headed in 2024. And I see a couple of members who were on this year's program to Sicily. So I'm sure they're interested to find out about what we're planning for next year. So let's get started and tell you all about our program. So first of all, just for those of you who are new to Wheel and Anchor, just a few words about who we are and what our mission is, I suppose, in Canada. And so when we started Wheel and Anchor a few years back, I have been organizing trips for Canadians for well over 30 years. And what I found is that whenever you get a group of people that kind of have a like-minded view of the world and you put them all on a trip, they quickly become friends and share stories about past travels and future travels and generally have a lot of fun. People just open up more. And that is kind of how we define travelers. And also not just that, but the fact that our members, again, being predominantly Canadian, have an appreciation for what sort of responsible, and I kind of hate to use the word, although I think it's appropriate, sophisticated travel is what we're all about. And sophisticated, not like in snooty or egotistical. On the contrary, it's really having the desire to interact with the local customs and traditions and people, and having a certain respect for them and a certain degree of inquisitiveness. These are kind of the traits that make up our members at Wheel and Anchor. And my goal was to bring them all together so that, you're like traveling with a bunch of friends. And so here's a shot actually from our group that some of whom are still with me now, even though our Sicily program just ended a few days ago, taken from above Cefalù, the second part of the program, high up in the Madoni Mountains, where we did a number of wonderful trips in and around the area on the north coast of Sicily. And so we, one of the things, particularly on our LiveAway programs, that we achieve, and my goal for everybody is that you become well-traveled, like you become really acquainted with the place. And again, a benefit to the style of travel that we do. We spend more time, particularly on LiveAways, that enables you to, you get to know the little, the butcher down the street or the guy in the coffee shop, and, people recognize you when you walk around, and you have a different sense of the place, and the place has a different sense of you when you travel in this fashion. So that's kind of what we're all about. Anyway, joining me on our webinar today, some of my core team and colleagues at Wheel and Anchor. So again, my name is Gordon, founder of Wheel and Anchor. I'm joined today by Barb. Good morning, or good afternoon, Barb.
Good morning.
The trip specialists who will answer your calls when you call or email into us and inquire about any of our trips. So Paula and Barb make our amazing team of trip specialists. And the other gentleman is my co-founder and does sort of technical support, if you will. And he's also the guy that puts together these webinars and our programs and makes everything look real nice. So today, you are obviously members who are interested in checking out the island of Sicily, what it has to offer. And I'm going to take you on a little digital tour as per normal around these two very interesting parts of Sicily. It's a big island. It's the biggest island in the Mediterranean. And so there's lots of ground to cover, and we are in two strategic spots. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a moment. Talking about LiveAways in general, what is it? So the idea of a LiveAway is, the name kind of implies it is that we want you to live away a little bit. So, others call it a long stay holiday. But this is a bit different than other things that you'll find out there if you look around for that kind of vacation, because our goal here is to position you in places that are strategic and allow us to go on a hub and spoke basis, if you will, out and explore around and kind of go at your own pace, in the sense that we don't prescribe the experience that you want to have. Rather, we give you a list of excursions and activities that we have discovered working with our local partners, and we provide an activity credit as part of the program so that you can choose kind of to do, as much or as little as you want. So, the activity credit that's built into the price, depending on the duration of the trip that you go, will cover a few or a number of the excursions, again, depending on the type of thing that you want to do. If you want to do something every single day or join every single one of our excursions, then obviously you're gonna pay a little bit on top of the price. And if you say, I'm going to kind of kick back and take it easy and discover things on my own, which we very much encourage. It's not about, this is group travel and that you are going with a bunch of other people, but you are also encouraged to be somewhat independent. And I know that some of our members in Syracuse in the first part, and as well as in Cefalù, arranged, they went on the train, they went off to a nearby town, to Catania or Taormina, or Palermo for here on the north coast of the island, and went exploring on their own, with a little bit of guidance from myself as the host, and as well as from our local guides who are wonderful. So that's a little bit the idea. Also, what differentiates our LiveAways is that we are gradually building a whole set of different ones throughout the Mediterranean region, as well as also our tropical LiveAway programs that are currently in Thailand and in Bali, Indonesia, and soon to be released in the South Indian Ocean in Mauritius and Réunion. But talking today about Sicily, which of course is in the middle of the Mediterranean, you could go and join us for a couple of weeks in Sicily, or you could do before it, you could go to Malta. After it or before it, you could also go do Cyprus or Madeira. We're also going to be introducing in the not too distant future Sardinia and Corsica, and we're going to have some wonderful sojourn type programs in the south of Italy to Amalfi and Puglia, as well as up to Tuscany, that are going to follow on to our program here in Sicily. So there's a number of different combinations you could do. One of our members that was with us started in Madeira, and then she joined me in Malta for a couple of weeks, and then in Sicily for a couple of weeks. She was away for a whole 8 weeks and had a grand time and really enjoyed the experience. So that's a little bit the idea behind our LiveAways. Now, why go to Sicily? Well, Sicily is a very different part of Italy compared to, a lot of people will have done sort of Rome and Florence or Venice, seen the really touristy parts of the country, at least from a North American perspective. Sicily is much of the same, the richness, that Italian culture, the food. I don't even know where to begin about the food other than it's outstanding. But, Sicily has had a very interesting past. And I'm not going to go into a history lesson here, but, it is often referred to, if you talk to people sort of about the socioeconomic situation in Italy, the south tends to be the poorer part of the country. And Sicily obviously has had its challenges with, organized crime in the past and all kinds of different things that have influenced its evolution. And it makes it, Italy, but a very different experience in Italy. The people, the way they speak, even the dialect of Italian that they use here is quite different. And being in the very southernmost part in the middle of the Mediterranean, and one of the key reasons why folks like to join us in the latter part of the winter and early spring is because the weather is lovely. And we have certainly been blessed by amazing weather over the last month. It's kind of ranged between 15 to 18 degrees, although it's for sure gotten up over 20. And almost every day it's been sun. We've had a little bit of rain here and there, but the weather for touring and just sort of hanging out and having a glass of wine on a patio, not something you typically think about doing anywhere in Canada in March. So it's another good reason to get away to Sicily. So let me go into a little bit of the details of our program, what's included, what's it all about. So there are 2 parts to our Sicily LiveAway program. So you can choose from 2 or 4 weeks in Ortigia, which is a lovely town, part of a bigger city called Syracuse on the southeastern coast of Sicily. Sicily, as you can see here, is shaped a bit like a triangle. And obviously Sicily, as everybody knows, is the boot to, the soccer ball, if you will, to Italy's boot. And Ortigia sits down here, as I say, in the south eastern corner of the country, of the island, I should say, and is a great gateway to visiting Mount Etna, the highest volcano in Europe, places like Taormina, which is probably the most well-known touristic town in Sicily, and other lesser known places. And when I say lesser known, for folks who are not as familiar with the geography and what there is to see and do in Sicily, places like the Noto, which was totally shaken up by an earthquake many years back, and the town was like practically rebuilt from scratch, and some beautiful nature as well in and around the area of Ortigia. So that's where we're going to spend the first 2 weeks, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. The second 2 weeks, we're going to be up here in Cefalù, and Cefalù is a city that dates back to back as far as Byzantine times. I think that they discovered remains of an old fortress on top of La Rocca, which is a giant rock. You'll see a picture in a moment of the city. It is, again, on the north coast, a very popular destination in the summertime. People come from all over Europe to enjoy the beaches of the north coast of Sicily and Cefalù. But at this time of the year, it's perfect because it's quiet. Yet everything is open, and as our local guide Esther was telling us, like, you guys come at the right time, because you can enjoy the beauty and all the interesting sights of the town and the area around without the throngs of tourists that are there from sort of May, June onwards. Our gateway to flying into Cefalù is Palermo, and for Ortigia, it's the airport of Catania, both of which can be reached through a number of connections via Frankfurt or Munich or Paris, Amsterdam. Some of our members flew through. So there's a number of different ways to get down to Sicily. So let me first say a few words about Ortigia, which is an island. You can see here an aerial view of almost all of it. An island that separates this town, this ancient town, from the mainland, from Siracusa, which is just on the mainland at the back of the picture here. And so Ortigia has all these narrow little streets that run through it. Most of it is pedestrian only, or sometimes they have those little tuk-tuk type vehicles to make deliveries and all the rest of it. So that gives us a great charm. And it's on this peninsula, so it's surrounded by the Mediterranean Ocean. And so we have two different accommodations that we're going to be offering next year that are a little bit different from one another. But one of them is sort of an apartment hotel style place called Lanterne Magiche, and this has sort of apartment style accommodations in right near actually the tip of that little peninsula, and so they've got apartments that are quite an old building, but it's been beautifully restored, and you've got basically studios and one bedroom suites, and they all have with a little kitchenette. Very comfortable accommodations, particularly for those who like to have a little bit more space and the ability to cook at home. And our members from this and other LiveAway programs are quite divided as to whether or not they want to have kitchens or not, because some people are like, going on holiday, you can go out and have a light lunch or a dinner for 10 euros or 12 euros if you want to have just a pizza or something like that. And for a lot of people, it's not worth it to cook, and others are quite used to and like the fact that they can cook at home. So that's where we like to retain this idea of an apartment hotel that we have in Ortigia. The second one, which is a lovely hotel that has recently been restored and sits, as you can see here, right adjacent to the seafront. So you've got sea views from most of the rooms, not all of them, but most of them. This is a traditional style hotel that, again, is recently been restored. Very, very cozy and comfy, as you get a sense from the pictures. And again, we have some different style of accommodations here, ranging from smaller bedrooms to a larger junior suite with a giant window that you can see pictured here for those who like to have a little bit more space. So that's the type of accommodation we offer. They are, by the way, about a 5-minute walk from one another. So a lot of our excursions will depart from a street where the cars can come, because the cars can't enter all of the little streets in Ortigia. So we pick a sort of a central meeting point that's only a few steps away from each of the hotels, to be able to venture out on some of our adventures around this part of Sicily. So I'll just say a few words about each of these. Obviously, in our program itinerary, you can read up in more detail about these itineraries and the things that you can see along the way. Syracuse itself, as much of Sicily, was influenced heavily by the Greeks during the period of settlement there. And so you'll find here an amazing Greek amphitheater, as you will in a number of other places, but you get a sense of the size of this. And so there is a lot to this area and Ortigia, a lot of history that goes back through various eras. And Sicily was run through by going back to the Arab era, and the Byzantines were here, and the Normans were here, and all of these people ran through the island, which again gives it a very, very rich history. Of course, as I mentioned before, you can't sort of mention Sicily without talking a little bit about organized crime and the mafia, and a trip that we actually didn't run this year, but we will hopefully next year, for those that are interested, is to tour a little bit around the sites where the film The Godfather was filmed at, and towns like Corleone, which were modeled in the film after these beautiful, very authentic, charming towns. Yeah, that's one of the trips that we're going to offer. Of course, you can't be in this part of Italy without taking a trip up Mount Etna. This is what it looks like on a beautiful day. And I know that our members had a little bit of inclement weather, to say the least. You never know what the weather's going to bring you, but up on Etna, but at over 3,000 meters high, the highest volcano still active in Europe, one of 3 active volcanoes in Italy. And so we have a couple of different options to go up Sicily for those that want to do a little bit of hiking through the lava field. I've done it myself. It's quite a fascinating trip. And if you catch it on a clear day, which, you never know what the weather's going to be like at these high altitudes, but you have amazing views over the Mediterranean and out down to Cefalù. Not far away from Ortigia, there's also a town called Noto, which was at one point completely destroyed by an earthquake. Of course, Sicily sort of sits in that belt, and has suffered the consequences of that over the centuries and millennia. And so it was completely destroyed and built up again. And then, sure enough, back in the 90s, their cathedral collapsed completely, and then they had to rebuild that as well. But as a result of all this rebuilding, it's truly a lovely town, and often best viewed. So we have a great tour of that in the evening time, where you see this whole town sort of lit up. We also visit Catania. This is the largest city in the region. And Catania, you can sort of see here the bits of Belle Epoque, if you will, architecture. And one of the things that we did, and I know was very popular among our members this year, was attend a symphonic performance at the local theater, which was, it sounded like it was truly fantastic. Everybody had a marvelous time. So a great day up in Catania. And as well, here, as in many of these places, we are able to source out some great restaurants. We're becoming more and more known as sort of the foodie tour outfit, because I do believe in not just going to sort of ordinary restaurants that sightseeing tour groups would go to, but rather we try to seek out places that are a little bit more interesting, so you can delve into the local fare. And Catania is no doubt one of those places. Taormina, as I mentioned, a little further up the coast of Sicily, and this is a very, very beautiful town that has become kind of the tourist mecca, if you will, of Sicily. It's got some very high-end exclusive hotels, and the town itself sits way up above with this beautiful view out over the Mediterranean. You can see Mount Etna there in the background, and it too has a very interesting history with, again, the influence of the Greeks and the amphitheaters, and so many different aspects to it. But most people, what they enjoy about Taormina the most is the great views and the quaint little shops and so on that you find throughout the town. Of course, Sicily is no different than other parts of Italy in that wine is a very important part of the culture. And so, we'll visit a few different wineries and probably be sampling wine, I know, for most of our members every day of the trip. And we get an insight into some of the local grapes that they have here, like Nero d'Avola. You're probably familiar with it if you've tried wines from Sicily before. That is kind of their number one grape variety. And I know the feedback I've gotten and my own experience has been that the wine that you taste in Italy tastes so much better than we can get off the shelf at home, unless you're paying sort of that top dollar. And that's one of the benefits to spending some time in Italy is, you walk into a restaurant, you get a bottle of wine for, 15 or 20 euros. Where can we enjoy that in Canada anymore? Not so much. Another one of the trips that we will offer if we get enough people to sign up, and it's a good point to mention, is that we offer a whole range of excursions, and as long as we get enough to sign up on any given one, then we'll operate them. This is one that we didn't run this year, but perhaps next year, if there's enough interest for it, is the truffle cooking class. Although more of central of Italy is more known for truffles, they do have certain pockets where you can find them here around the area of Ortigia. And so I know that for those of you who like truffles, much like myself, learning where they get them and how they're collected and how they're used in various dishes is it makes for an interesting experience. So that gives you a little bit of color about the kind of thing that you could expect in Ortigia on the east coast of Sicily. The second part of our trip, and many of our members, in fact, a majority of our members on this trip joined us for the 2 weeks in Ortigia and then continued on, and I met them in Cefalù. I actually had been with some members in Malta, and I joined our other members that were in Ortigia, and we traveled over to the north side of the island. It's about a 3-hour drive from Ortigia up to Cefalù, going over the mountains, and you'll find this is a very different part of the country. Because you have the Madoni Mountains that run right up to the coastline. So the area around Ortigia is relatively flat, low rolling hills, with the exception of Mount Etna that sort of sticks out. Whereas the north coast of Italy is quite mountainous, forests. So it's a very different landscape. Beautiful sand beaches, particularly right in Cefalù. In fact, our hotel is right across the street. One of the two accommodations we offer from this beautiful sand beach. And well, here you can look at a picture of the old town with La Rocca, which is a giant cliff that basically the town wraps all the way around. And they have a fortress on the top that dates back to, I believe it's the 6th or the 7th century. And so it makes for a great, to get some exercise to walk up and visit the ruins of that medieval fortress with great views. Our accommodation in Cefalù, we have two different options. One of them is quite a modern styled hotel like you see here, so a little bit different than what we're doing in Ortigia, but we chose this one because they have, again, it's right across the street from the beach, and all of the rooms in the Astro Suites have a sea view, either a side or a direct sea view. So this is kind of the view that you get. This is actually taken from the roof of the Astro Suites Hotel, looking over to the old town that is barely a 10-minute walk away. And the rooms very comfortable, they're all 1-bedroom suites with a nice generous living area, some seating area and a kitchenette. And so I know that everybody very, very much appreciated the staying at the Astro Suites Hotel. We also have a small B&B that we use, that we had a few of our members staying in the middle of town. And this is right in one of the pedestrian streets, not far from the cathedral. And it's quite a cozy little spot. So as I say, a few of our members enjoyed being sort of right in the thick of things, but yet barely 10 minutes walk apart from one another. So those are the accommodations that we offer there. So Cefalù itself, once again, no different than Ortigia. The town is full of all these narrow streets and pedestrian walkways, and restaurants and shops sort of lining everything. In the center of it has this beautiful Duomo, this 16th century cathedral. This photo here is the view down on top of the town from La Rocca, through our historical tour and with our local guide Esther, you can get to learn a lot about the evolution, the different periods of time that Cefalù was occupied by, again, all those different groups that came through Sicily over the centuries. We will also hopefully do a little trip by boat along the coastline. And again, when you look back to the coast and you see the mountains in behind and the old town of Cefalù, it's really, really quite picturesque. So that's always a favorite. And luckily, we're not far from Palermo. This is, of course, where you fly in and out of. And Palermo, most people, again, will think about and associate with, the days of the mafia. It's only a 40-minute train ride from Palermo. And I know that we have a great little organized trip with our guide, Esther, who shows you the key highlights, obviously the main palace and the cathedral, as well as they have an excellent market there. But some of our members went back on their own because, as I say, you could just hop on the train in 40 minutes, go there for lunch or dinner, and explored the botanical gardens and a host of other things. So as I say, one of our members, Jennifer, I think she went to Palermo 3 times while she was there. She really just soaked up the city and everything that it had to offer. Not far from Palermo is the town of Monreale, which is on one hand known for its Norman architecture, but it has the most stupendous cathedral that you'll find perhaps in all of Sicily. We also have a great little restaurant nearby that doesn't normally, it's pretty much a locals restaurant. And the feedback that I got from our members was that they had a marvelous time dining and getting all sense of this great cuisine. Personally, I'm very much somebody that enjoys the outdoors and walking and hiking. And we did 2 hikes this year outside of Castelbuono. There's a national park called the Marni. In fact, it's a UNESCO protected area because they have some species of plants and animals that are sort of endemic to this region. And when you're up there in the mountains, I mean, you'd almost think you were in the Alps, and you don't really expect the mountains to go up that high. The town of Castelbuono sits in the middle of this region with its own castle that you see here pictured. And so we had a little tour of this town, but the highlight of the day was a gourmet sort of lunch and wine tasting. We had some amazing dishes paired with some of the local wines produced right on site in and around Castelbuono. That was a great day. You can't visit Sicily, of course, without seeing all this wonderful ceramics, in particular the cones. These are the green and red shaped figures here, which represent are symbolic for welcome in Sicily, but all the other patterns. And so getting a taste of how those things are made and what's involved in them is a big part of visiting the region. And as I say, the hiking and the walking, we did 2 different hikes on this trip, and we're going to offer at least one more because our guide, Letitia, was absolutely wonderful at not only leading the way, but also giving us a little bit of an insight into, again, some of the plants, some of the species that you found. And we were really, really impressed by her knowledge. Again, not just looking out at all this amazing scenery and these towns that sit right on the top of the peaks. When you look out, you kind of imagine that is the Sicily that you think about. And so we'll have a couple of walks and hikes as well. So that pretty much, I think, let's see here. That pretty much gives you a little bit of a taste of what is in store in our LiveAway program in Sicily. As I say, details on all these different things is available in our program itinerary and the other documentation that we send out with you, just to give you a sense of what we're talking about for next year in terms of pricing. And again, this is written up in all the program itineraries. We have a lot of different options because we have these 2 different accommodations in each of Ortigia and Cefalù. So there are more combinations that are shown here, but this gives you an idea for a 2-week stay of what you're talking about in both, as I say, Ortigia and Cefalù. So they're sort of similarly priced. And if you stay for a whole month, then you get some even better pricing, because we are able to negotiate some better rates from our hotel partners for those who stay on a little bit longer. So, and here are all the inclusions, and I won't go through it all, but I just want to point out this activity credit here that is part of the price. And you can apply to the different excursions that you can choose from our whole list. And so we also have at least one great dinner for every 2-week period. We include SIM cards as well, so that we have a great system that we use called Telegram in order to communicate amongst the group and let everybody in on the different happenings and things going on while you're staying there. The only thing that you have to look after in addition, which obviously we can help facilitate, are both your airfare and your insurance that are available through us. And in keeping with the approach that we've taken on many of these different programs, because Sicily, when I showed up at the end of the pandemic and was thinking, oh, wow, there's nobody here early in the year, it'd be easy to get hotel rooms. Well, it seems that the world has been discovering this and all the other places that we're headed, because it is a challenge to get and hang on to hotel rooms. And so, but we have been able to work out a deal that for those who sign up early, we can offer an early bird special of $500 for any program. That's if you book a 2-week program or a 4-week program, you get $500 off per person if you book early, because that enables us to commit early and hang on to the space. So I think that's a big benefit as well. And finally, airfare, which typically is in and around these rates. Airfare has kind of been all over the place. That's a whole different topic I won't get into with following the pandemic. And so at the moment, these are kind of range of what people have been spending to get over to Europe. So yeah, airfares have definitely edged higher since the pandemic, as we kind of predicted. So all the better reason to go over once and make the most of that trip over. So now I think, Barb, it's time for any questions and answers, and it looks like a few have come in. So perhaps you could help me go through them, and we'll make sure everybody gets their questions answered.
Yeah, we have a question about how safe in general Sicily is, especially if people are venturing out sort of on their own.
Totally safe, completely safe, no issues at all. Certainly in Ortigia and Cefalù, these are relatively small towns. They are touristic towns, so there is really no concern at all. And I know that our women members were out roaming around on their own at night. I mean, not really super late at night, but crime is not really a problem in these places at all. The only exception I might make to that is if you are off in Palermo late at night as a single person. Although I know I ended up arriving in the middle of the night and walking around. I didn't feel in any way unsafe. Obviously, it's a little bit different as a man versus as a woman, but that's sort of unlikely to happen. Where you're staying, it's safe.
Okay, and then Ardell's asking, in terms of the second choice of accommodation in Cefalù, is it only a room? I think there was 2 room types.
In Cefalù, yeah. So in Cefalù, we have this small B&B, which there's only 3 different rooms. The room itself is just a large bedroom, much like a hotel room, but it has its own shared small living space and kitchen for all of the 3 for all of the 3 units in that complex. So I know this year we had 2 of the 3 rooms occupied and the other one wasn't occupied at all. So they kind of had the place to themselves. And I figure next year there's probably a good chance that we'll have all 3 of them booked up. So
okay, great. There's also a question about how far like a grocery store or restaurants are from where the accommodations are.
Super close. In fact, you'll find little alimentare, like little supermarkets kind of strewn all about. And in Ortigia, I think there's a larger one a little further out of town, but not super far away. In Cefalù, we had a fantastic gourmet grocery store literally just around the corner from the hotel. So I know that folks went there and got a lot of prepared food on nights that they just didn't feel like going out and dining in a restaurant. So yeah, everything's super close by. And the same thing applies to like laundry services. They were quite close by, so easy to access. So yeah, again, you can stay there very comfortably knowing that everything's kind of around the corner.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, there is also a question about the rates for singles in the two areas. So that will be on the program itinerary.
Yeah, that's on the program itinerary. So I showed some indication. So we've tried to keep the single rates as low as physically possible. I think that we had a lot of solo travelers on this year's trip. And I think that they found that that the value was there. We obviously do offer our companions for the road program, which enables solo travelers who are, looking to match up with somebody. And if you've got the larger accommodation, it's more comfy that way. That's also always an option to avoid the extra cost of traveling and taking your own room.
Sure. Okay. And then Lynn's asking what the average cost of a dinner might be, or the range, I guess.
Yeah, well, first of all, it all depends on how much you eat for dinner, but I think that you can go out and enjoy sort of a plate of pasta or pizza, like a one-course dinner for sort of 12 to even as 10 to 15 euros, depending on the kind of place. So that would work out to like $15-20 Canadian. You can have a glass of wine, depending on in a restaurant, usually around 4 or 5 euros, so like $6, $7, $8. That being said, you can go out to more. Personally, I think I found that the average meal that I went out, if I had like a first course and a second course, or a main and a dessert and a glass of wine, sort of I'd be spending in and around 25 to 30, 35 euros per meal on average. And some of the meals we had were more special and might have been more like 40 or 50. But I think that most people found that dining out for the quality of food that you get is definitely less expensive than in certainly in the bigger cities in Canada.
Okay. All right. So we have a question. Do you know if e-bikes are available to people to explore?
That is a good question. We will have to take that to get back to them, but I'm pretty sure that you can get e-bikes. You can get them pretty much anywhere. Good question. We'll get back to you on that. But I'm fairly certain we can get some e-bikes for you.
Sure. Yeah. Did you want to touch on weather?
Oh yeah, sure. Because I always forget to mention weather. Thank you. Thanks, Barb, for mentioning that. Weather, as I mentioned at the outset, in March and early April, I think that on average, we had sort of temperatures, in the evening, it dips down to like sort of 13, 14, sometimes even a tad cooler. And during the day, it was sort of between 16 to 18 degrees on average. We had sun most of the days. There was and for the group that went to Ortigia this year had a little bit of inclement weather up on Mount Etna. It was a little bit of a windy day, to say the least. But generally speaking, and lately in Cefalù, some of us went swimming in the ocean, which is still chilly, but that we had some days that went up over 20 degrees. I think the warmest was around 23, which is a little bit unusually warm. But compared to Canada, everybody was thrilled with the weather.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, the only thing, I guess we do get quite a few questions about the excursions, when and how they select those excursions. So maybe if you want to go over that.
Yeah, sure, I can touch on that. Excursions, because we're constantly working with our local guides who are wonderful, and digging up new ideas and things. And obviously we've taken the feedback from our members from this year into account, and things that weren't as popular or weren't the ideal wheel and anchor experience. We've replaced with other trips. We will send out the excursion list. Our aim is sometime after the final payment, so at about 3 months before the trip. Between 3 and 2 months is when we generally aim to get the questionnaire out, and then you choose the different excursions. And then within a week or two after that, we will send out the calendar with all the excursions and when they're going to happen, and we do our best to sort of balance them. In fact, we're working on a whole new system of organizing our excursions so that people get what they want and when they want it, based on when things are available. Because of course, certain trips are, like a symphony in Catania, for example, is only happens on a certain day. So we don't have a lot of flexibility on that, but we try to balance out the trips so that the excursions are spread out throughout your stay.
Okay, great. There's just one more question that did pop in about, is there access to swimming pools easily anywhere in either location?
Well, the Astro Hotel, for example, in Cefalù has a swimming pool right there. It's not heated. You won't generally find heated swimming pools, maybe in some 5-star hotels or indoor pools, but that's not really the type of a place that we like to stay. Swimming pools, less common. Again, they have one at the Astro Suite Hotel. I don't think anybody went in this year in Cefalù because, although it was nice, it wasn't swimming weather. The beach was across the street. I know some of us went in there. So, but if you need to have a swimming pool, I'm sure we can find you one. In Ortigia, it's probably more likely to be outside of the actual village itself, because I'm not aware of any hotels that have swimming pools inside the old town.
Okay, perfect. Oh, one more question came in. What footwear is suggested for hikes for Mount Etna specifically?
You know what? Most people went in like running shoes or shoes with treads. So you don't need to bring your hiking boots. You don't need to pack anything fancy. We're not doing mountain climbing. There's no scrambling up rocks or anything like that. As long as you have, good solid shoes with a good tread on them, because it is gravelly and uneven at times. But that's sufficient.
Okay, that's perfect. If people have other questions, they can always call in, and Paula and I can help with any other questions that people have on it.
Exactly. Feel free to email us is sometimes the best way, particularly if it's a tricky question, because then Paula or Barb can come back to our team and to our local team in Sicily to make sure that you get all your questions answered. And thank you for joining us. And I hope that you'll come out and you'll consider Sicily for next year. As I say, I know we had a grand time this year. We will be offering as well, because actually where I'm sitting right now is just to the north of Cefalù in the so-called Aeolian Islands. This is a group of volcanic islands that is really beautiful, and everybody here that's with me has enjoyed it so much that they said you've got to come back here next year. So we are going to work on that as a post trip to Cefalù. So look out for that in a couple of weeks' time when we get all the details together. So anyway, thank you for joining me once again. Next week is our webinar about
I think we haven't put it out.
You're right, we haven't put it out. So wait for this weekend's newsletter. You'll find out where our trip of the week is next week. In the meantime, surprise. Take care. Join us next week, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thanks very much.